And when I ask a question, if you just sort of say, okay, the sort of camera goes back to you, and then
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that just rolled on,
See,
didn't it?
see what a pro.
I am Ola and I'm the founder of All Things Money. All Things Money is a personal finance platform that teaches young adults how to manage their finances effectively. I started it back in 2020, which is almost 4 years ago, which is wild. And I started it off the back of teaching myself how to invest, and I realized how little we are taught about investing, as well as other crucial topics such as how to budget and save, etc., etc. So I started All Things Money 4 years ago now, and it has become my full-time job where I am hopefully equipping young adults with the tools to kind of help them navigate adulthood with confidence.
So tell me a little bit about, why is financial education and well-being so important, and especially right now, and also why are you passionate about this? What fuels you and drives you?
Yeah, I think just off the back of COVID, I think especially we have seen, the cost of living rise substantially. And adulting was already hard before COVID existed. We have bills we have to pay for, we have rent, etc., etc. However, I think the cost of living has exacerbated the need for financial education and also the importance of financial well-being. I think one, navigating adulthood is so hard when you don't have the tools needed to kind of know how to financially navigate that. And then on top of that, knowing how expensive like living has become, I think now has had a huge impact on people's well-being, financial well-being. A lot of people are now stressed, are worried about how they can make ends meet. And I think now more than ever, financial education as well as financial well-being is really, really important because again, I think money is one of the biggest stresses of people for people in the UK. So I think, yeah, they kind of come interlinked, but I think it's really important that people feel equipped to know how to manage their finances, but also have the tools to know how to look after their mental health when it comes to managing their finances too.
Perfect, brilliant. And what fuels your fire though? Why all of the things you could do, you're obviously really talented, but why financial education and well-being for you?
Oh, so financial education has become a real big thing for me now because I started All Things Money back in lockdown. I thought it was going to be like a 1 week hobby, 2 weeks, just to kind of tide my boredom over lockdown. However, just seeing how quickly All Things Money's platform has grown over the last 4 years, it makes me realize how important how important financial education is because if people didn't care about their finances, then I'll still have zero followers. But that hasn't been the case. It just kind of shows how young people are looking up to other people online for social media, like for personal finance tips. And that just shows the real issue within the UK and the fact that financial education is lacking so much in schools that people now have to, resort to the likes of TikTok and Instagram to kind of get their financial education information instead, which, yeah, whether or not that's a good or bad thing, we can discuss that for another day.
I was gonna mention that. Yeah, it's really important, isn't it, that there are credible people
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people and definitely the next generation are looking to social media and that's fine, but it is really important that we have now some really credible resources and people that know their stuff. Do you
Yeah.
want to tell us a little bit about the importance of that and the extent to which maybe you're going personally to ensure you know what you're talking about as well?
Yeah, I think it's really important that young people are doing their due diligence when it comes to following certain creators online, especially if you're looking to kind of get personal finance tips and information. Myself now, I am going down the route of um studying for my financial planning diploma just to kind of gain the extra credibility because I came out of university and fell into doing All Things Money full time, but I'd love to kind of add that extra layer of protection for myself and also for those following me, that they know that they are kind of following a credible source. Now I know not everyone has the privilege to be able to do that, but I think it's really important that if you are someone that kind of looks to social media for their advice and information, then make sure you just do that with care.
Perfect. Yeah, so important. So talk to me, yeah, a little bit about some of the key challenges that you're seeing right now for everyone in general,
Mm-hmm.
but specifically maybe young adults.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges a lot of people are facing now is making ends meet. Honestly, you know, we've seen the cost of living go up, but we haven't seen salaries kind of go up in accordance. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that a lot of people are now trying to tackle, which again is having then an impact on their mental health, because obviously people are getting stressed, worried about how they're going to, you know, make it to the next month. And I think I started All Things Money sharing budgeting and saving tips, and it's all great telling people to kind of cut everything they can, you know, possibly afford to like live off. But I think it's really important that we're now kind of moving away from that kind of mindset and actually educating people on how they can increase their income, or, you know, find ways of multiplying their streams of income as well. Because again, I think a lot of people are on their bare bones budget now. So it's about now educating people on how they can kind of increase their income to kind of help them, you know, with the coming months.
Yeah, brilliant. And are you still seeing, or have you seen things change? I mean, the work we do for young adults is still like the basics,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not being implemented at
Mm-hmm.
school. So are you still seeing that there is a need for the basics to be taught in the workplace to young adults as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of young adults have goals and aspirations, which is great, but they don't know how to get there. And I think knowing how to kind of actually start with the basics, such as how to actually budget and how do you actually check your payslip to make sure you're getting paid the right wage, is really, really important. And again, gets really often overlooked. So yeah, I think, you know, knowing the basics of how to create that budget. What does, you know, your savings look like? You know, how can you actually set a plan to actually reach your savings goal, rather than write it down and never actually tackle it? How can you actually put the right steps in to kind of learn how to actually save and save effectively and regularly? And then I guess we can kind of go into the technical jargon like investing later on. But yeah, I think it's really important that the bare basics are covered first.
Yeah, brilliant. Do you see as well? We see a lot, and we talk a lot about financial resilience,
Mm-hmm.
and it just doesn't exist, and I don't think this is an age thing. We see it right the way across the board.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that people just don't have, an emergency fund, or have never been taught how much might be needed,
Yeah.
just to be able to fall back on. But the fact that I think it's 100, over 16 million people got less than £100.
Mm-hmm.
That stat gets bandied about a lot. But are you still seeing that, and still seeing a need to
Yeah,
help people with
yeah,
that?
100%. I think it's really hard because I think a lot of people know they need to save, but I think not many people are in a privileged position to have the extra disposable income to save. So I think that's the kind of catch-22 that I've kind of been seeing. But yeah, outside of the people that maybe don't have the disposable income, I do think there are also people that maybe do have the income but don't know how much they need to save. So I think that's again where like financial education comes into play, in the fact that it's really important that we're teaching young people and people generally how to save, why they should save, and kind of give them a rough guidance on how much they should save as well. Because it's all good and well saying you should have savings, but you know, people kind of struggle working out how much is a good amount of savings in your savings pot. So I think it's really important that we cover all those bases.
Yeah, definitely. And we've seen that it does affect everyone. We talk a lot
Mm-hmm.
about the fact that we're not all in the same boat at all. That might have been said when in lockdown, oh, we're all in the same boat, but we're really, really not. And
Mm-hmm.
we I don't know if you've heard us say this or other people say this, but we talk a lot about being in the same storm. This
Mm-hmm.
storm is there and is affecting everyone, but in
Yeah.
different ways. Some are just cruising through in their yachts, and others are having to row that little bit harder, and
Mm-hmm.
others are drowning actually,
Yeah.
and need some help and need to be pulled out. It's affecting different people in different ways. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so on to some of the kind of the practical things.
Mm-hmm.
We'll look at employers, and then we'll look at kind of individuals as well. So what practical steps and tips would you give employers to support their teams, and help their people?
Good question. I think it's really important that employers provide a safe space and environment for employees to be able to come and approach them and talk about finances. I think in some certain organizations, it's, you know, wrong to talk about your finances, how much you're getting paid, etc., etc. I think employers more now than ever need to be able to create that safe environment firstly, and then secondly, encourage conversations as well. I think, you know, we have Talk Money Week back in, you know, the end of the year. We also now have Financial Wellbeing Month. I think it's really important these employers jump on that to encourage conversation, because I think, again, money is still such a big taboo in the UK that it's really important that people are openly talking about finances. And then also, I think they also have a role to play when it comes to educating their employees and staff as well. I think it's really important that employees feel like they are being taught the tools they need, because again, where we weren't taught it in schools, I think now employers have that responsibility to kind of carry the load as well.
Yeah, definitely. We try and position it that we talk a lot about our responsibility, and is it the responsibility of the employer or the employee? And we sort of flip it up a little bit and say, well, look at it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, who cares if it's your responsibility or not? Is it an opportunity to gain an advantage on another employer and attract the right talent and retain the right talent and keep your people loyal and help them? You know, there's the
Yeah.
moral standpoint, but although also the commercial point of view as well. It should make business and commercial sense, shouldn't it? I suppose.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. So yeah, great tips for companies. So what would you say are your top tips for kind of employees and just individuals of all ages, but specifically young adults as well?
Yeah, I think it's really important that people start with that budget. Now, every interview I kind of have, I feel like that's always my top tip. But I think it's really important because I work with so many people that tell me they want to save or they want to invest. And when I tell them how much do you want to save or invest, they have no clue because they don't know how much they can afford to. So I think it's really important that you do start with that budget, because it allows you to work out how much you can afford to save and invest or do what other things if you want to go on holiday, for example. So starting with that budget is really important. And then secondly, once you have that budget in place, I think it's really important to start building that emergency fund. So, having that money that you can fall back on, because I know there's loads of people now having to resort to credit, for example, because they don't have that emergency fund in place. So if you can and you have the disposable income to be able to do so, then I do recommend saving regularly as well. And then outside of that, I think it's really important, tip number 3, to kind of find ways to increase your income. Now, I'm not telling everyone, I'm not saying everyone has to become like a boss babe or, become a hustler, but I think it's really important that outside of your 9 to 5, you're finding ways that you can maybe look to increase your income, or if you have the confidence to do so, negotiate that salary as well. Like I said, salaries aren't going as high, aren't raising as high as the cost of living is. So I think it's really important that if you can have conversations with your employers to see if you can negotiate your salary as well.
Brilliant, perfect. Right, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit now.
Okay.
And I love it. You know, we always talk about the basics. So yeah, budgeting, financial resilience. I love the one about additional income, really important, and we've seen a lot of that since kind of COVID. But can we go a bit deeper? Like for those that are listening to this and going, yeah, great, I would love to be better at budgeting. What actual tips within budgeting would you give? And then what tips would you give within building your emergency fund? So like just a couple of steps to how to start, because there's no one size fits all, right? You've got to
Yeah.
find the way that works for you.
Definitely. So when it comes to establishing that budget, I think it's really important to take stock of where you're at right now. So how much money do you have coming in and how much money do you have coming out? And when it comes to how much money is coming out, also take into account your debt as well. I think it's really important that you add that as an extra expense that's leaving your bank account. And once you've kind of worked out that, you want to work out the difference between the two, where you should hopefully be left with disposable income. So if you are in that fortunate position where you do have some disposable income, then that's where you kind of want to budget your finances and work out, okay, how much now can I live off on a weekly basis. That's what I do personally. So give yourself a weekly budget so you know how much you can live off every week. If you find yourself in a position where you might have a bit of surplus that you don't actually need, then that money might then be able to go towards your savings. But I know loads of people often ask about how much you should try and save. I think anywhere between 5 to 20% of your income is great. But again, I always recommend start as small as you can first and then build that up accordingly, because again, it's great saying 20% of your income and people can't afford that. So yeah, I think start small and start regularly. I think once you've developed that habit, then you then can slowly increase that amount accordingly. Because I think some people like to start at like crazy amounts and then they struggle to stick to it. So be realistic, I think, is really, really important. And yeah, ideally you want to get to a place where you have around 3 to 6 months worth of expenses saved up as your emergency fund.
Perfect. Brilliant. Yeah, it's so important, isn't it, that we forget that we might have all the best intentions, but it's not about intent. It is habits. It's doing it little and often, and getting into good habits when it comes
Yeah.
to saving. So brilliant. Okay. So all things money, really, really exciting. I probably I think found you or saw you online over, well, at least a year ago, maybe even a year and a half ago. We were sort
Probably
of,
now.
I'm a massive fan. I personally think, and you know this, but I personally think there are some brilliant people, a bit younger than me, that are knowing what they're talking about and
Hmm.
sharing it in a really relatable, relevant, engaging, can I even say fun way, which is massively important, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, I think we've had a time where finances and money management was, you know, not the most interesting of subjects. So you and others are doing a brilliant job in that. So keep it all up, and especially on the socials and everything else. But tell us what's kind of coming up for All Things Money. What's happening? What are you excited about? What's new? And what can people look out for?
Good question. I think this hopefully might be out in time, but I'm hosting another live event now for my community, which is very exciting. So that is all about how to kind of financially secure your future. So how can you save, invest, save and budget now, but also invest for your future, so your future self for the next 10 years or your retirement. I think it's really important to, forward plan. So that's my biggest project. And like I said, I'm also studying to become a financial advisor as well. So yeah, those are my two big things at the moment that I'm kind of working on at the moment.
Excellent. And I'm coming to your event
Yes.
as we've said, so we'll get to meet in person for the first
Mhm.
time, which will be brilliant. Excellent. Okay, so tell us a little bit from what you've learned. Financial Wellbeing Month. You know, I'm really passionate about not just the educational side of how to do things and how things work. That's vitally important, but also the massive intrinsic links between financial well-being, mental health, and suicide
Mhm.
prevention. How important is that, do you think, to also understand the links between our money and our mental health?
Yeah, I think, like we've discussed earlier, I think there is a huge link between money and mental health, which is why I love the idea of Financial Wellbeing Month, because again, it's very easy to just say, we're going to have a day where we talk about money and then everyone forgets about money. And I think having that whole long lasting month allows people to really think about, the importance of financial education, financial well-being, and then also understanding, how well that links with your mental health. Because like I've already said, it's it's quite scary, the link, and especially like I said, with this cost of living crisis, a lot of people are struggling, and it pains me to say this, but a lot of people are struggling in silence as well, which then can have, like, the huge repercussions that I don't want to go into. But yeah, I think it's really important that we are creating spaces where people can openly talk about their finances, how they're feeling, because again, that's not something that's often done in the workplace or outside of work either. So yeah, creating that environment I think is really important, which is why I love the idea of Financial Wellbeing Month.
Yeah, brilliant. And you know what? We've found that the challenges and the solutions are so similar between mental health and financial well-being. You know, the stigma, the taboo, the
Mm,
fact that we're not comfortable talking about it is the same in both. But the potential ways to get over it are very similar as well. The creating the safe spaces, the
yeah.
psychologically safe environments, the leadership buy-in, for leaders to talk about money and
Hmm.
the fact that everyone's going through the challenges. There's not many people anyway that are just not being affected by this. So
Hmm.
we can learn a lot, I suppose, from the great work that's been done around mental health and well-being as well. So brilliant. Thank you so much, as always, for being part of this. We want as many people to watch this, to check you out on all the different social media posts. We'll put links in so they can follow you and connect
Hmm.
with you and follow your journey even further. But let's hope we could do even more work together, Ola. I think you're a massive part of the whole financial education and well-being space, to be
Thank
honest.
you.
And I think if people can sort of take a leaf out of your book, then they'll be all the better for it. So thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for chatting with me.